Test. No, they're saying no. Can you hear me now? I feel like a commercial. Now we're good. Hey, Chris, how are you, man? Okay. We're going to start in about 2 minutes. Wow. Now you can really hear me. We'll start in about 2 minutes, and I'll go over the agenda and sort of the process, and hope to get your feedback and comments. Thank you. Wow, everybody's quiet. Wasn't like this last meeting. Who was at the last meeting? Anybody? Okay. Yeah, I think we've learned a little bit. We now have microphones, which is really good. And we're going to have a process. I don't think we expected to have so much interest last time, but it's good to see you here. First of all, let me recognize Vice Mayor Henderson. She is right there. Just say hi. And former Council Lady Evans is right here. So great to have you all here. I'm going to go through the agenda. It's a 3-hour agenda. You guys, I got coffee in the back. Is that okay? No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Yeah, I know, 3 hours really. My wife would tell you I could probably talk for 3 hours, but we'll just keep it at that. So first 10 minutes, we're going to go over, if you don't know, Brook Hollow has a traffic calming project through a participatory budget, which is great because, as what I've seen, it's a cut through now coming from west to east, and we need to slow people down. I was coming back from St. Henry the other day from an 8 o'clock mass, and boom, 8:30, and I could just see all the cars coming, trying to sidetrack from the White Bridge Harding intersection, right? So we know that that's a problem. We need to do it. So we do have a traffic calming project, and I know everybody loved the speed bumps last week, last meeting we had. Everybody who likes speed bumps? Okay. Glad you don't have eggs. But anyhow, this is one without the speed bumps, but we do think we need some traffic calming just to create safety on the street. So we got some feedback. So the first 10 minutes is just to really do a recap. Then I have a detailed list of who's going to speak when. So this is a forum. Forum means that there's different opinions. There'll be question and answers for each opinion. So here's Michael Briggs will talk about, here is the project. Then we're going to talk, Emily Evans is then going to discuss, and we'll ask questions and answers with that. Then Emily will talk a little bit about her concerns and some of the areas that she has concern about, question and answers. We're going to have another person then talk about, that will talk about the transit referendum, more question and answers, okay? If we somehow run out of questions and answers, we'll figure out a way, but we have about an hour-long process. It's an important subject, right? I mean, this is a pretty big deal. It's one of the top priorities in our city, and so I want to make sure that I'm more the moderator. I'm here just to make sure you get questions and answers. When you're ready to ask questions, rather than yell out, we're going to ask you to come up to the microphone and stand in line. So once someone's done, we'll sort of let you know, hey, if you have questions for the speaker, please come up in line. We have 10 minutes for questions each time. Try to keep your questions within a minute or so, a comment or two, just so that we could get through 5 to 10 people pretty quickly and get those answered. Fair enough? Okay. So we'll do that, and then at the end, we have talked about District 23, our organizing group that is concerned about the nest. This is Chris Remke. He's our president of that, a board that we are working to ensure that our zoning doesn't impact our neighborhood through the nest, which we've all been obviously very much opposed to, since we have the character of our neighborhoods that we have to maintain. That's it. Any questions before we start? Cool. Okay. Let me introduce Amy. She is here from NDOT, and they revised the traffic calming. If you would just go through that, Amy, thanks.
Sure. Sure. Hi, I'm Amy Birch. I'm a consultant for NDOT, and we heard at the last meeting that there wasn't a lot of appetite for the speed cushion plan that we had first put together for Brook Hollow. So this is a traffic calming project on Brook Hollow between Highway 70 and Charlotte, and this has been identified through the participatory budgeting process. So the new plan includes traffic circles at 2 to 3 intersections, pending our budget that we can add the third one, as well as radar feedback signs. So the 3 traffic calming traffic circles would be at Jocelyn Hollow and Brook Hollow, and at Davidson Street and Brook Hollow, and then the third one would be at West Hillwood and Brook Hollow. And so one of the slides, this one here, shows some pictures of what that looks like. But if you've been out to Harpeth Knoll area out in Bellevue, we've installed some of these type of traffic circles there, and they're made of concrete. They have signs in the middle. They are they're mountable on the edges so that larger vehicles can navigate through them. And they fit within the existing footprint of the intersections. These intersections have kind of wide radii, so it narrows the intersection there. And then the radar feedback signs are located in this proposed plan between Harding and Jocelyn Hollow, one in each direction. You're familiar with Brook Hollow. It does have some cut-through traffic, we believe, and there's quite a bit of hills and curvature. So if you can see on this figure up here where the yellow squiggly lines are, looks like caterpillars, that's just us identifying that's where the hills are on the street. And I think that's... So the comments we heard, yes, thank you, council member. Some of the comments we heard were, is it possible to add some crosswalks to these intersections where the traffic circles are? So we'll take that information back to NDOT and talk about that. There are also some ideas about, can we add just flashing lights over these intersections instead, maybe, as a treatment to raise awareness to the intersection, to get people to observe the stop signs. And then there's some concerns I heard about some of the radar feedback signs that you already have in this neighborhood. Sometimes they're working, sometimes they're not. Can we go take a look at those and make sure they're operating to their tip-top shape? So we can look at that. And also heard, this is relative to other projects, but we need to add some more signage to some of our speed cushions where they're located on other streets so that people can avoid them if they need to. And then in addition to the overhead lights, if there's more stop ahead treatments that we can add to these intersections, that might be helpful as well. And I didn't mention earlier, and I apologize, we're also proposing to add white edge lines along the length of the street, which will narrow the lane widths on Brook Hollow to 10-foot lanes, which is plenty wide enough for larger vehicles, and just makes drivers feel more constrained as they drive on the street and drive slower on the street. Councilmember, did you hear any other comments that we need to summarize?
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions if you wanted to ask about this. And the white stripes sound like a little of a strange idea, but it actually, everything we've heard in the studies are if you narrow the street with a white line, people slow down because they see they have a smaller place to drive through, which is not obtrusive for anybody, very simple. And frankly, as a walker sometimes down these roads, it gives me a little bit of a space to walk down the lane. So pretty good. Any questions? I'll take this on. Two questions real quick. Just a minute.
Oh. Mm-hmm. No, the comment is that she has noticed along some white edge lines, they're ridged, meaning the rumble strips on the edge of the lines. And would that be part of this project? No, I don't think it would be. Yes.
Yeah, I know it's traffic calming, and it's also calming for people stopping and starting, going, keep an eye on noisy cars, motorcycles. Are there any numbers on where these circles for intersections like that where there are a lot of accidents? Are there any studies to say the accidents drop by this much in this area that gets down and have to broadside?
The question is there data and statistics on whether intersections with these traffic circles are safer and have fewer crashes? I can't give you a specific number, but we generally find that these are safer when we calm traffic and bring everyone's awareness to the intersection and slow them down, that the crashes would be fewer and less severe.
Okay, two quick ones.
Yes.
Are there stop signs planned for these traffic circles or would they be yield signs?
The question is, are there stop signs for these traffic circles or would they be yield signs? These are, I believe, at intersections that are stop controlled now, and that would remain. So they would be stopped with the islands.
Okay, you're okay. And just a note that this is on Zoom and we're recording this. Okay, so no cussing or anything, I'm just kidding. Anyhow, I just want to make sure, in case you have friends or family, and I think some people send me a note last minute that they want to record this or at least take a look if they weren't there. And then Mayor Belmead here, Rusty is here, so welcome Rusty, good to have you. Okay, with that, no more questions, then Mike Briggs from the Mayor's Office is going to talk about the overview of Choose How We Move. And then we're going to take 15 minutes of questions. So he's got a presentation that actually you can see on the screen in a minute. Just joking because we didn't last time. And then we'll go with that. So good, welcome. Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Councilmember Druffle. It's great to be here. This is also good that we've got a good turnout. I've heard there's been some good discussion, so I want to appreciate you all for coming out again tonight. I want to make sure that you do have information about the Choose How You Move program. So at the back table back there, there is a handout that has the Choose How You Move program title page on it. It's also got a list of projects that's within this council district. So it's specifically for Councilman Druffle's district. And so I definitely encourage you to look through that and look through the information that's online. So if you go to nashville.gov/transit, you can find out more information about the program, dive into interactive maps. You can look at all 90 plus pages of the document, plus the financials that are in there as well. And would encourage you to look through that, ask any questions of us, and follow up with the questions with the council member or with our staff. We can be reached at any time at transit@nashville.gov. So if you've seen any information about the program, a past presentation, just raise your hand so I can get a feel of where we are. Okay. So I'm going to go through this probably a little bit quicker. It's not going to be much different information than what you've seen if you've come to another session. But we'll also try to help clarify some information that's being shared that is not always accurate about the program. To clarify my role in this, I'm not here to advocate one way or the other as to how you vote on this program. I'm here to give you information about the program, why it was developed, how it can benefit you, and help answer questions. So you're not going to see me at all take a stance on this, but I am here to help clarify things in case you have questions. So David, thank you for controlling the slides in the back, and we'll get going here. So what I'm going to go through today is what's in the program. I'm not going to spend as much time on some of the elements, so that gives you all a little bit of time to talk and ask questions. But we'll go into a little bit of why we chose those elements, What's the cost and when will we get the benefits? Big thing to remember is that you will decide on this as a Davidson County voter on November 5th. Next slide. This is the ballot language. You probably have seen this mailed to you. It's the very last item that will be on the ballot here. So it's broken up into 3 sections. It is meeting the state law as to what we have to explain in a plain language as part of the IMPROVE Act, which allows local jurisdictions to pursue a funding mechanism of this source. So what it is referring back to in the first paragraph is the ordinance that was passed by Metro Council, and it explains the key areas focusing on sidewalks, signals, service, and safety. Second paragraph is the cost in today's dollars. Also, ongoing operating and maintenance costs, and who will implement the program, the different departments within Metro. The final paragraph is really the issue that you're voting on, which is talking about how it's funded. So it's through a series of federal grants, revenues from the transit fare system, debt that we can issue, and a sales tax surcharge of 0.5% or a half penny. You're then asked to vote for or against. So if you want to implement the Choose How You Move program, you would select for. If you do not want to implement the program, you would select against. Next slide. So, talking about the 4 components, you'll hear us talk about sidewalks. We're going to add 86 miles of sidewalk. This is a good example on Dickerson Road. We have many of our pikes like this. So if you look at Murfreesboro Pike, Nolensville Pike, Gallatin Pike, we have people that are walking in ditches trying to get where they need to go. They're also crossing these streets. These streets were widened back in the 60s, and we've not really touched them since then. So they were meant to move traffic at high rates of speed, and we now have people who are crossing those streets trying to access transit. We also have development that is happening along these streets, and it's very closely aligned with a lot of the past plans to where the market has shifted within Nashville for that development to take place. To put this in comparison, we were able to build about 6 miles of sidewalk last year. Choose How You Move will help us complete the priority sidewalk network and essentially help accelerate our sidewalk construction program. Next slide. So the next S is signals. So we put this up oftentimes to get us thinking about how technology has evolved over time. Our traffic signal system is very outdated, and in fact, it's using a lot of the same processes that when we first put in an electric signal in West Nashville back in 1940. So it is simply using a timing plan, and back then they were using dials. Since then, some of the technology has been updated, but it's still using the same process of using a timing plan based on time of day. And the signal tech sets the signal timing, and it goes. So if the power goes out, or there's any other kind of issue, it immediately makes that signal out of sync with other signals in the network. So next slide. So with Choose How You Move, we're going to update about 600 of the traffic signals. We have about 900 countywide. And these will be connected into a new traffic management center that just got launched last week. What's important is that the traffic management center has come online with only about 70 signalized intersections tied into it. We have about 10% of our signals today that are not connected to anything at all. So someone has to physically go out and reset that signal. The other thing that this will help us with is if you go to an event downtown, you've seen the police officer at the intersection pushing a button with the traffic signal cabinet open. They're doing a good job clearing that one intersection, but 3 or 4 intersections down, they are not able to see what's happening across the corridor. So with these improvements, we have analytics that are running behind the scenes. These signal cabinets are all updated to be working from the same technology. And we'll have signal techs and engineers that will be able to monitor things in real time and help respond to changing traffic conditions. Next slide. So we've talked sidewalks and signals. The third S is service. So currently in Nashville, we have no service that operates, transit service that operates between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. So for a 24/7 workforce, that is really critical. So we have a lot of people that work in the hospitality industry or in the healthcare, so think nurses, that may start a shift overnight, so early morning hours or get off on a late shift. They have no other way to get around town other than to drive a car, Uber, Lyft, or taxi. This will provide, for the first time in Nashville's history, transit service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A key component of this is the 54 miles of all-access corridors. So that's where we're improving everything. We are upgrading and filling in sidewalk gaps on these main corridors. We are upgrading and enhancing all of the signal systems to work better for traffic flow and for buses that will be part of the service improvements. So those will have service every 15 minutes or better on those corridors. And then we're improving the safety conditions. So where we saw the mother pushing the child in the stroller, we're helping them get to where they need to go much safer. So think of these 54 miles on your busiest corridors: Murfreesboro, Nolensville, Dickerson, Gallatin, Charlotte, West End, and Clarksville Pike. The design of those corridors will be different based on the context. So West End and Charlotte tend to have sidewalk networks that are somewhat intact, whereas Dickerson, Gallatin, Murfreesboro, and Nolensville will be a complete rebuild of the street from curb to curb. And it's our opportunity to upgrade the street infrastructure for our modern needs, because those streets have really not been touched in 50 or 60 years. And so we'll be doing everything on some of those streets. Another key component are 12 transit centers, where we will be able to get WeGo riders from neighborhood to neighborhood much easier. So instead of having service all go into downtown, the busiest part of the city, we will be able to connect across town on crosstown service. And then finally, there's 17 park and rides where if you are not able to reach transit by sidewalk, or it's right at your doorstep, you're able to drive to a park and ride, get into the WeGo system. That will also help us with some of the regional issues where our neighboring counties will be able to drive in, and those residents will be able to connect into the WeGo system. And it will also set us up for future expansion of regional transit to hook into the local service much easier. Next slide. So we've talked sidewalks, signals, and service. And so the fourth S is safety. So when we do all of these improvements, we're able to upgrade a significant number of bus stops to have sheltered waiting areas and be safer. 35 of our intersections where we're experiencing our highest number of fatalities and serious injuries will be redesigned, and we'll be adding bike lanes. And the safety issue is important because we've had two issues just in this area that I'm aware of, where we had a bicyclist who unfortunately lost their life, I think in Westmead. And then we had a recent pedestrian fatality on Charlotte Pike, where it was a worker who was getting off from work, trying to cross the street, and was hit and killed. So these issues have real life impacts to those who are family members or loved ones that where we can upgrade the infrastructure to work a lot better. Next slide. So I bring this up because that's really the safety that Nashvillians deserve. We have a lot of streets like that on the right. This is in Madison, to give you two comparisons in one area. And so the photo on the right is where we've got a future complete street identified, where we want to add sidewalks, connect to the bus system, and be able to cross the street safely. And so we feel strongly that the infrastructure on the left that was recently rebuilt and done with the Madison Station Boulevard is the direction we need to head with a lot of our streets. Next slide. So we got all of this based on over a decade's worth of plans. These are not new ideas. They've been talked about for many years, and it's tried and true city building and planning in terms of infrastructure. So building sidewalks, making sure our infrastructure is safe, and being able to operate a robust transit system are really fundamental city building infrastructure needs. It's based on 66,000 pieces of input, and we're really wanting to drive down the cost of living with this program. So next slide. And that's because housing and transportation issues have risen, and so I won't belabor this because if you've seen the presentation before, we've talked about that. And so at the end of the day, no matter how you get around Nashville, we're wanting to make sure there are more options, that the cost of transportation is manageable and helps keep people here in Nashville. Next slide. So what this means at the end of the day to your pocketbook or wallet is when you go to Walmart or Target and spend $50, you'll drop an extra quarter. So that ends up being about $6 per month for most households in Nashville. So that $6 or that quarter that you drop will go 100% to this program. It can't be used by other worthy government needs. It goes 100% to the Choose How You Move program. Two things, though, are unique about this, and that one is our sales tax. We have the lowest one in the surrounding area. And so this brings us in line with our surrounding counties. And you'll see a map here in a second where there's some nuance with both Sumner and Cheatham that I can explain. The second is that 60% of our sales tax is estimated to come from people from out of county. So someone that lives in Hendersonville and works in Nashville and buys lunch, they're helping to contribute to the program. All of the bachelorettes that come buy a beer, buy souvenir t-shirts, they're helping to fund this program. And this is essential infrastructure for Nashvillians. Next slide. This just quickly shows the map across the state of the sales tax rate. So when you look at the darker colored counties, those are counties that have maxed out their sales tax rate. That will bring Davidson County's sales tax rate in line with all of those darker counties. You'll see some nuance with Sumner and Cheatham, and that they're lighter colored. When you begin to look into what Cheatham has, all of their cities have the same sales tax rate as Williamson, Robertson, so they have a higher rate. Sumner just passed in Hendersonville, just their city, a higher rate as well. So essentially everyone around us, other than some exceptions with Sumner and a little bit of Cheatham, have a 9.75% rate, which that half penny is what brings Davidson County in line with. Next slide. This is what it looks like if you buy something in Davidson County, just on a tube of toothpaste. So it's 18 cents that you're paying on sales tax. Next slide. If you go up to Robertson County, which has the half penny increase, you're paying 1 cent higher. Next slide. On a higher purchase involving a microwave at $55, the sales tax is $5.09 in Davidson County. If you hit the next slide. In Springfield today, when you go up there, it's 27 cents higher at $5.36. So we put these examples together to show you how this plays out in terms of a sales tax surcharge. Next slide. So you might be thinking, when will we get the improvements to this? Think service, technology improvements sooner. So we'll be able to upgrade some of our routes to 24/7 service much earlier in the program. There's a low-income fare program that we'll be able to begin in the first few years. So that will allow riders to be able to ride WeGo Transit for free if they qualify for housing and nutrition assistance. And we've never had a program like that before in Nashville. Things like sidewalks will begin being constructed. We'll begin the discussion on some of the all-access corridors and their design. Signals will begin being upgraded, and so by the time you get to year 10 and year 15, we'll have the program completed. Next slide. So, in summary, to respond to some of the issues that we're hearing from this area as well, you'll notice I did not mention anything about zoning with this program, and it's not hiding anything from you. It's the fact that zoning is always something that's within the purview of Metro Council. It's also something that if you're in a satellite city, it's within the purview of the Board of Commissioners for that satellite city. So Choose How You Move does not change zoning. It's not tied to any proposals that have been floating around in the last year either. The program is funded through a 0.5% sales tax surcharge. That's also a half penny. So every dollar that you spend is a half penny that's going into this program. And so when you spend the $50 at Target or Walmart, you chip in 25 cents. So 7% state sales tax plus the 2.25% local option tax plus the 0.5% surcharge equals the 9.75%, and that aligns with most of our surrounding counties and cities. And then it does create a low-income fare program, and this will be the first time in Nashville that we would have a program of this nature. So with that, I will stop and take questions.
Yeah, if you have questions for Mike, if you could line up here.
I have a question.
Yeah, if you could come up to the microphone. We have 30, 40 people on Zoom, just so everybody knows. So we're going to try to keep this so that we can hear everybody throughout the process. So we have about 10 minutes, so if you could keep them pretty short. If there's questions that don't get answered, you can send them to me, and I'll try to get them out to everybody. Thank you.
Can you tell me, please, what is the current percentage of the capacity of WeGo ridership that is in the system today? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? In other words, we have a certain capacity, and then we have a certain ridership. What is the percentage of ridership that we get as it relates to the capacity?
So you're wanting a percentage as to how many buses are run and what that could seat versus how many seats are filled?
Correct.
So we'll have to look into that. And I've got Amanda. She's not going to know the answer, so I'm not wanting to put her on spot. But we will be able to follow up with that. What I can tell you, though, is that WeGo did 8 million trips last year on the system. And so we'll be happy to try and figure out an answer for that.
I think I'm getting to an answer. I just got the information from Eric with WeGo to narrow that down. He gave me a bunch of stats. Did not have a time to go through them, but I'm going to send out a note, and I will summarize with a copy of what he sent me, so everybody will have the information.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
I'm Bill Howell. I used to work with Tennesseans for Fair Taxation, and I agree that Nashville needs improved transit. But this referendum is not about transit. It's about sales tax. If business leaders wanted transit, they could have funded it with property tax 10 years ago. Instead, they went to the legislature to get authorization for using sales tax. That's where the Improve Act came from. On average, families with less than $400,000 annual income will pay more sales tax than property tax to provide the same revenue that this proposal calls for. I urge people to defeat this sales tax referendum and tell our council members to come back with a property tax proposal. Thank you.
Hi, my question is about the smart lights, because people seem to be expecting that the lights would be timed. Is that correct? Like if I'm leaving Bellevue and I'm driving into town, that if I go the speed limit, I shouldn't really get any red lights. Is that what you mean by timing in a car?
So it's even more sophisticated than that. That is probably what cities were doing back in the 1990s, where they were using dial-up modems to then synchronize their signals. We've never taken that step, so this is an opportunity for us to sort of jump into having analytics that are running behind the scenes connected with fiber. So today it's a mishmash of signals that we have, where some are connected through an antiquated copper wire system that can be logged into and adjusted. Others are not connected at all, to where a signal tech has to go out and manually adjust it. And so we want to get to where all of these are connected along a corridor with analytics that are running behind the scenes. It's helping pop up issues to a signal technician and engineers in a traffic management center so that they can go in and manually adjust things.
So the buses are going to have transponders on them. So when they're, for instance, if I'm waiting at White Bridge and I've been at a red light and it's my turn for a green, that I may have to sit at that red light longer because the bus has a transponder that will keep the light green for longer for the bus to go through from the transponders that are on the bus, correct?
It will depend on the situation in terms of the bus's approach to the intersection and the timing that is on the signal.
Right,
So
but there
it
are
may keep a
transponders
green.
on the bus, though, that will keep the light green longer if a bus is approaching, correct?
Right, but you're talking maybe a few seconds that it would do that in order to get the bus through.
But, I mean, it is significant because there's going to be twice as many buses, and they are big and wide. And so that could really affect if somebody's trying to get to work or school or something like that. That's my, yeah.
I certainly hear that, but today we have no way of doing that with the signal system being connected. So today, when we were going to the meeting and everyone was backed up from White Bridge up past Aquinas, we set in green lights. And so this would be an opportunity to have analytics that would be running behind the scenes, monitoring things over days and hours to be able to begin adjusting.
But the buses will have transponders to keep the lights green longer so they can get
Not in
through?
every instance. So it would only do something like that if the bus is maybe behind schedule in order to keep it on schedule.
Okay.
Yep.
Hey, Michael, thanks. This is probably an elementary question. So our upgraded signal system, if we suffer a long-term network outage, will they function autonomously like the old system in that case? And can they be administrated locally in the case of a unavoidable, uncorrectable long-term network outage? In other words, can the city keep moving if the management system just can't function?
I'll have to double check to double check that. I mean, it would be connected through fiber, so it all, of course, depends on electricity. So if electricity is out, you would either encounter blank signals, and it would be handled like today, where people should be coming to a stop, like a four-way stop, and proceed through. The thing is, today, if something like that happens, we don't necessarily know that it's happening.
Sure. I think, yeah, so I guess my question would be food for thought. Is it possible to autonomously function or to administrate locally? Again, if we go the whole city, 900 signals, right, all under a management system, if the management system fails, are we at a standstill or can they be administrated like the old stoplights? That's it. So I guess
Yeah,
we'll
I mean,
find out.
well, I'll double check on that
Okay.
as to
And
what
then-
the backup would be for
Thanks.
that.
And then bike lanes, will they be buffered bike lanes or will they be exposed to heavy traffic as well? And I'll take that while I walk.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good question about.
Yeah, and let me just leave these as the last two questions. We have more time toward the end. Otherwise, we're going to get way behind. So if you guys could be the last two questions, if you don't mind waiting until we have another set of questions and answer system after Emily's.
Yeah, thank you. So related to bike lanes, we've identified 39 miles of complete street projects. And so those overlay in 35 miles with bikeways. The reason we did that was those are areas where we are having safety issues. So they're the high injury roadways, and what we want to do is elevate the design so it's not just a white painted stripe, but that you have some sort of protection so that more people feel comfortable biking in those types of facilities.
Michael,
Yes, sir.
Chris Rimke, thank you for being here. The planning, you mentioned early in your presentation that it relied on a number of previous studies. Was anything done, in way of a transportation consultant to discuss what the best practices in cities are today, not
Yes.
10 years ago?
Yeah. So in fact, HDR and InfraStrategies, which are two consultants that do work nationally across the U.S., were hired to help pull together the Choose How You Move program. So it looked back to the 70-plus plans that had a lot of public input. It helps to kind of think through where we envision areas of growth areas that we want to preserve and how transportation improvements help connect that. And so it's based fundamentally on all of those plans. So it's based on the fact that residents have told us these are areas where it's appropriate to develop. We're seeing that happen on some of our corridors. So if you drive on Gallatin Pike, Dickerson Pike, Murfreesboro Pike, parts of West End, we've seen a lot of those corridors transition from fast food restaurants over to mixed level, multi-level development. And what we haven't done is help complete the sidewalk infrastructure on some of those corridors. We haven't upgraded the traffic signals, and we haven't delivered on the transit service improvements as identified in those plans.
As part of the study, I don't know how complete the study is in terms of what are the details of design in the end, but in the forward looking, I would hope the consultant covered things like the VIA company or someone that does more like rideshare as an option to work with it, because by the time you you widen roads and build sidewalks and curbs and sewers they've got to have and all those things, there are programs implemented in other cities that use much smaller vehicles to get into neighborhoods and places that buses don't traditionally go, and so I hope that becomes part of the consideration as you look at these, because they may be more cost effective.
Yeah, you will see in your list of projects, there's a program called WeGo Link that's utilizing a subsidized Uber ride. What that is doing is helping complete that last mile connection from a transit stop to your home. So we know we can't build the sidewalks fast enough. So this is a supplement to help with that. That has the potential to be upgraded to other things. So we're not having to always rely on Uber. It could be that VIA comes in as a partner or some of these other services. I think the important thing to remember, though, is that the space on our streets are limited. And we've used the analogy of like fitting an elephant through a wine glass. 200 and 300 years ago, you couldn't get an elephant through a wine glass. That's still the same issue today. It's a matter of space constraints. And so we know if more people are on a bus, we're able to make it reliable and convenient, more people will take it because it's treated like a valued resource in the city. That actually frees up room for more cars to be on the road. And so as a growing city, that's really important. And so the space constraints are always going to be limiting. So the ideas of using technology are great. This was talked about in past sessions. It's been talked about 10 years ago that autonomous vehicles would be here in 5 years. And we're here 5 and 10 years later, and I don't know that any of us got here through a self-driving car tonight.
Well, some of us may have taken rideshare, I don't know, but it is an option that doesn't require sidewalks.
So, yep, thank you.
So I know we're all probably pretty excited to find out the numbers of current levels of bus ridership. But I think, as it currently states, we're forcing people into other alternative options, forcing people to go to like a main transit center and wait long times to get the buses. Do we have any projections of what it will be like when we get these 12 transit centers up running with the additional buses? How much more people will be riding that and be helpful, and instead of forcing them to rideshare or other areas that may cost them more long term?
So we know just based on the launch of the Rip Patton North Nashville Transit Center this year, that we've seen about a 30% increase in ridership. So we'd expect to see that we would have similar routes increase in ridership. We also know, based on operations both pre and post pandemic, that we're a bit of an exception in Nashville, where we've had ridership now surpassing pre-pandemic levels. A lot of that is due to the fact that WeGo has re-optimized the route network on the main corridors to be much more frequent and reliable. And so we know if it can be frequent, reliable, and dependable, more people will take it because it's there when people need it.
Okay, thanks.
Are you done?
Thanks.
Say thank you. Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say thank you, because I know this is sort of the end of my part, and we're always available as a resource. So definitely go to nashville.gov/transit or email us. Happy to answer questions, happy to follow up on any details and give that over to the council member as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And good job. If you don't want to go that way, you can always send me an email, and I'll get back with you next year. Just kidding. And next we have Emily Evans, former council lady, and she's going to talk about some of her concerns. And then you'll have about 10 or 15 minutes on question and answers. Okay?
Thank you, Tom. It's nice to be here amongst the 23rd District again. Thanks for having me. I want to note for all of you that Thom Druffle is one of the few council members in the Metro Council who will actually hold an open forum on this topic. So, yes, thank you. I think I commend you, Thom, for doing that, and I am sad to see that so many members have declined the opportunity. That's not the way it used to be. So I'm here. I was your council member for about 9 years, and I am here because I guess really beginning in 2010, but increasingly, I have gotten concerned about the forward direction, particularly the policy direction of the city of Nashville. And there's a few things that are a bit alarming to me. Between 20 and 21, our population growth, you've been told 100 people a day, you know, all that, it dropped 1.8% year over year. Now, is that because we had a 34% property tax increase? I don't know. Was it because we abandoned our responsibility to educate our children? I don't know. But we lost population. The last time we did that was in the great financial crisis in 2008. We have regained some of that population, but not fully. And the truth of the matter is our population has shown very little growth since 2016. And during that time, even though we've had fairly flat population growth, and you can get this on the census website if you want to look at it, you know, we've pursued a number of policies that seem to benefit a very small number of people to the detriment of the wider population. And that began, I think, with the convention center, in my mind, where very similar arguments, and you will hear about the transit. If we build it, they will come. You know, we don't have any ridership projections. You know, we didn't have any tourism, we didn't have any convention center projections, but they said if you build it, they will come. That actually didn't turn out to be the case. The building sits empty most of the time, but it taxes the living daylights out of the hotel and tourism industry in this town. So that's why I'm here. I hate bad policy. And I hate policies that don't benefit the most possible people in the city of Nashville. So I just want to make that clear. All right, so we put our concerns, and we have a little grassroots group called the Committee to Stop an Unfair Tax, and it's literally around a dining room table. The first issue I have with it, and Mr. Howell already pointed this out, is sales taxes are highly regressive. You know, you saw the numbers, it cost you 5 extra cents or whatever. But when you get to zero in your bank account at the end of the month, 5 cents, 10 cents, $1, it matters a lot. And it's easy to forget that when we're sitting here in the beautiful 23rd District. But the fact of the matter is, it's a struggle. And it's a struggle on top of 20% cumulative inflation that has been just killing everybody since, and I'm not, that includes me, since 2020. That's also on top of a 34% property tax increase in 2020, and that is, we are likely to see another property tax increase in 2025 if there's any indication from the mayor. Taxes is what drives people out of your jurisdiction. Migration is the gold standard for how good your government is doing its job. And that gold standard is telling us that the government is not doing its job particularly well. So that's the first point I'd like to make. The second is the price of this project is not $3.1 billion. It is $6.9 billion because what they're giving you is, and Mr. Briggs correctly pointed out, that's in today's money. But if you do it like when you buy a car or you buy a house, they give you that truth in lending statement, and at the bottom, the number is always twice, what you think you're paying, right? All right, truth in lending number, if you want to call it that, is almost $7 billion over 15 years. And that is not going to be on your ballot, okay? The Metro Council decided not to include it on the ballot this time. They did in 2018. They're not going to do it this time. The mayor says it's simpler that way if you don't have to think about half the cost. Now, the next thing is, and Mr. Briggs properly pointed out that this proposal does not change zoning. The Metro Council rezones property. That is absolutely true, okay? But starting in May of 2022, the White House, and you can go to whitehouse.gov, do a search for zoning reform, and what you're looking for is May 16th, 2022. President Biden announces new actions to ease the burden of housing costs. And this is not partisan, I'm just telling you what he said. And under this plan to reduce housing costs, they said, we're going to reward jurisdictions that have reformed zoning and land use policies. Okay, how are they going to do that? All right. Further on, it says, reward jurisdictions that have reformed zoning and land use policies with higher scores for certain federal grant processes. We're going to do that for the first time at scale. That's what the White House said. Okay. Now, you all are familiar with zoning reform because you know about NEST, right? And Chris Remke is going to talk about this a little bit. That is zoning reform. And if you just look at zoning reform in Milwaukee, zoning reform in Los Angeles, you'll see how those things are connected to transit. The federal government has very few ways in which to influence policy at the local level. The biggest way is money. Education policy is federalized by the enormous amount of money that comes from the federal government to the local jurisdiction. How does that working out for you, It is one of their few tools. You can further go and investigate the White House website, December 14th, 2022. That's a readout with the White House visiting with state legislatures about zoning reform. July 27th, 2022, there's additional actions on land use and zoning reform, including a new program that they've announced. So this does not require anybody, the program does not change the zoning, that's true. But what is sitting out there is a massive incentive to the tune of $1.4 billion for our Metro Council to enact zoning reform, okay? Now, they may not get away with that this spring when the report comes back. They may not get away with it this term, but what I want you to think about is how long do you want to fight against a $1.4 billion incentive? How much time do you want to dedicate to that? Now, you all have a great council member, okay? And he's going to do a good job. But not everybody has that, as demonstrated by the fact that they don't even want to have an open forum about this. So that's the nest, the connection to these two things is very real. It doesn't take more than it doesn't take more than a Google search to figure it out. And these incentives are very, very powerful and hard to control. Maybe not next month, next year, but sometime in the future. And then I also want to say that as part of White House policy, there is a focus on transit-oriented development. That is a really nifty tool to reward developers who happen to build near transit centers with some really sweet federal financing using the Treasury rate, which you and I can't get. The next thing I want to say, next bucket, is that it is 24/7 transit is inherently unsafe without a secure system. People who ride mass transit very late at night or very early in the morning are more likely to fall victim to crime. There's no plan for securing the system that has been brought forward. There's been talk about, potential transit police, and that is a pretty big number. And then lastly, I want to say that we think the plan is unnecessary. We have resources through property taxes and others. Yes, that involves making choices. I'm making choices, you're making choices. We all have to make choices. The innovation in mobility that Chris Remke alluded to here a few minutes ago, it continues to advance. Autonomous, we don't have the right climate for that, but we absolutely do have the right climate for, other types of on-demand travel, like Las Vegas' solution, which is on-demand bus service to get their service workers into central Las Vegas for the Strip. The sidewalks, 84 miles over the next 15 years. If you would like to do the quick math on that, I think that's about 6 miles per year. How much? Is it 6 miles? Yeah, okay, well, we built 6 miles last year, is what the presentation said. So you're not really gonna get a lot of sidewalks, and not only that, you're gonna get sidewalks that only relate to transit, not necessarily down your street. And I think the synchronization, when I moved to Nashville, that's what we were talking about, synchronization then. So we're all wondering, why do we keep talking about it? We should do it. So those are the three big buckets that we have for it. But really, what it comes down to for me is that I see nothing but a string of terrible policies that's affecting our population growth, and that is going to negatively affect our city in the future. And I'm happy to take questions.
So let's be clear, this has been kind of bandied about, but currently only 2% of our population is riding public transit. And even a 30% of that 2% is still, you're asking 98% of the population to pay for this. And do you know how much it costs the city now per rider who gets on a bus?
The budget is now for MTA is about $124 million deficit. We collect about $10 million in fares. So there's a pretty massive gap, and it's really all cost. I mean, $10 million is not a lot relative to the total cost. So most of it is the spending that we do in Metro, which is about $160, $80 million.
I mean, I heard at one point it was $19 every time somebody got on a bus.
It was what?
$19, but I mean...
That seems, I haven't done the math, but that seems about right. But 2% of the population or less uses it. It's actually, the American Community Survey, which is conducted by the Census Bureau, says that about 6,000 people use transit to get to work in Davidson County, to give you an idea how small these numbers are. And I'll add, too, if you're using transit to get to work, the only jobs you can find are the ones on the transit line. You don't actually get to look for a job somewhere else. You're stuck with the transit line. So, but I haven't done the math on that, Antoinette.
Thanks.
I'm curious why you want to use fear as a main argument in opposition to this proposal. Now, let me tell you a little bit about me, and I'll explain to you why I'm asking that question. I have lived in Westmead, the same house, for over 35 years. I work downtown. I'm a lawyer. If you don't think traffic has gotten worse from west to east in the last 10 years, you're mistaken. If you don't think traffic has gotten worse going north, south, east in the last 10 years, you're mistaken. If we don't do something about the gridlock on our roads, then we are only going to create a situation that is worse and worse and worse. A lot of people don't go downtown, except when they get summoned for jury duty. And I talk to jurors, and they say, my God, this is awful. How do you stand coming down here? And I say, because this is where I work. This is where I choose to work. So if we do nothing because of fear, it's only going to get worse. Number one. Number two, you want to talk about safety? Oh, we don't want to consider an option because it's not safe on the buses. Folks, it's not safe driving to work in the mornings. It's not safe going to Kroger's or Publix down the street. It's not safe anywhere in the city. There was a time, I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and I would hear the police say, well, the defendant was in a high crime area, North Nashville. Well, my office is in North Nashville. You know what I say now? Tell me where in the city of Nashville it's not a quote-unquote high crime area. You can get jacked at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the Target right down the street. Please, don't use fear of crime as a reason to say, I'm not going to consider this option. I'm always troubled when we say fear drives legislation, fear drives policy, because all it does is impact in a very, very negative way. So please, take fear out of it. And finally, in all due respect, about the zoning. So your argument is, we don't want to consider this because maybe it's possible somewhere down the line there may be a hook coming out on the funding side which will enable our council to just say, the hell with it, put duplexes in Westmead. In all due respect, is my cup half full or is my cup half empty? I listen to you. I think yours is half empty. I'm sorry. I have faith. My cup is half full. Thank you.
Thank you. Just respond. We only got time for one more question.
Okay.
We're going to come back again. So please.
We're going to stand here together.
One more question.
We might have different things to say.
No, I don't think we do. Okay, so on the, I didn't mention fear. I hope none of you were scared. No. Okay, good. Thank goodness. So the question of the safety, just to reiterate what I said, 24/7, 365 is difficult to secure, and it needs to be secured. That costs money. There's no provision in the plan. If you're scared by that, I'm sorry. That's not what I intended. The second part of it is, will this help traffic? You know, we don't have an estimate on ridership, so we don't really know. We know that the biggest traffic problems we have are coming from the region, from Maury County and particularly Rutherford County, and we don't have a plan for that. It requires leadership. It requires leadership at the state level, which means our Metro Council is going to have to stop calling them names, you know, and go up there and make friends. And that right now does not seem to be in the offing. I think a bigger issue is going to be our population growth in the future and how difficult and livable this city has become because of the cost of living, by virtue of taxes alone. Yes, please.
Hi, thank you, Councilmember Druffle, for hosting this, and thank you both for your comments. So I got to know a lot of y'all last year. I was one of the main, loudest opponents to Belmead Plaza, and that was mostly because of the poor infrastructure plans in place for that intersection. But wait before you clap. So I feel like in that process, I really got to know so many of y'all and really have a shared understanding of what was in the best interest of the neighborhood and each of us as individuals and community members. And so I'm actually really excited about this. I started riding the Metro bus when I was 10 years old. I grew up in Bellevue. My mom dropped me at the park and ride, and I rode the bus every day until I was 16. I went to Meg's, I went to Hume Fogg. My mom worked downtown, she worked for the state, she rode the bus. I'm excited about this because that intersection at Belmead Plaza, it's not good now. It's not going to get better. And this is at least something that starts to move the needle because we are unable to ask developers to do these things for us. We cannot do it. The state will not allow it. So this feels like a way to start to move the needle. And I know that might be an unpopular opinion, but I promise, like, I'm with y'all. I hear you, and brought 3,000 of us together against Belmead Plaza, that redevelopment, and I feel excited about this. And we haven't used the general funds to do this. So I think the argument that this can come from the general fund, if that was true, we would have done it already.
Well, that's a good question to ask. But I want to just follow up your comment, this idea of we have to do something. You know, we have to do something. We haven't done something. The sales tax increase has been rejected by margins that are pretty breathtaking, 70-30, you know, just 3 times, okay? So the public is kind of in the mood, like, move on. But when you say we have to do something, first of all, you have to be able to talk about what your ridership projections are going to be. How's this going to change? How's this going to improve the lives of the people that live in this city? Okay, and I haven't heard that.
But
you know,
just
now
because you're not a bus rider
you
doesn't
told
mean
me
that
how
other
you
people
feel about
aren't.
it, but from a policy presentation perspective, here's what you get. You might get a sidewalk. You might get signalization in 15 years or so. You know, it's so vague. And it's so hard to know exactly what's going to happen here.
That's government.
I know, but I appreciate your optimism. But that was the same argument at the convention center. If we don't build this, all these things won't happen. You know, well,
I think for me, I respect that so much and that point of view, and you have way more knowledge of these things than I do. I think my general takeaway is I have a privilege of being able to have a car to travel throughout the day at the times that I want. I just want to make space for there to be a conversation about the fact that on this side of the town, we have a lot of the things that we need, and it's okay to make those available to people in other parts of the city,
and I
too.
totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. The thing that I would, you know, mass transit and taking mass transit is an economic decision. This city and many cities in the South have struggled with mass transit because we have grown during a period of unprecedented prosperity across the globe in the history of humans. That's what's happened. And when you see mass transit in New York, it started in the 19th century when we didn't have that prosperity. If you took the bus in 1950, it was because cars were so expensive relative to your income, all right? When people ride their bicycles to work in Vietnam, why are they doing that? They're doing that because that is what they have to do.
Okay, enough right now. So we're going to have some what's considered the campaign part. It's going to come back. We're going to get questions and answers from Emily or our Vice Mayor. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilman. I appreciate Councilman Druffle. It's been my pleasure to work with him over the last 4 and now 5 years. He was kind to introduce me earlier. I am Vice Mayor Angie Henderson. In my capacity as Vice Mayor, I am President of your Metro Council. And I have served on the council for 8 years, representing Southwest Nashville, District 34, which abuts District 23. So we had an opportunity to work together. I specifically reached out to the Choose How You Move campaign to ask them to have the opportunity to speak to you today on behalf of the campaign. Okay, so as a private individual and citizen and as an elected official, I am out in the community encouraging folks to vote for this campaign. I am for it. I have a sticker on my car and I wear a button everywhere I go. I think I'm uniquely positioned though because I opposed the last transportation campaign, okay? And so The reason I asked to the campaign if I could come and speak with you all today, because I reside in West Nashville, and I've been concerned about some of the assertions that Ms. Evans is making. And so I just kind of wanted to break those down, frankly, and just kind of give you a response to those and kind of share why I am for this plan. So particular to the zoning piece that Ms. Evans speaks to about zoning reform being some sort of massive incentive to regarding these $1.4 billion. The primary incentive to unlock federal dollars is dedicated funding, okay? Having a dedicated funding stream. We are only one of 4 of the top 50 cities in the United States of America that does not have dedicated funding for transportation. That's not good, y'all, okay? $1.4 billion of federal dollars, that's your money. That's your tax dollars that are going to other cities. We want to kind of repatriate that. We want to bring that back into Nashville. Zoning reform is a whole host of things. Among them, and I did the majority of my policy work in Title 17, our zoning code. We've already passed a fair amount of zoning reform. One of those was eliminating parking minimums in our urban zoning overlay. That's a zoning reform. We did that, okay? There is not some kind of nefarious effort afoot to rezone the whole entire county. I want you to hear that from me as vice mayor, okay? We had 2 new council members, I think very earnestly desiring to make this city more affordable. And to be frank, they were a little challenged in their approach, putting everything into one big package and branding it, and it made a lot of people nervous. And I understand that. And to be frank, I cautioned them against doing that. I did not think that was a good approach. But several of the pieces of that package have now passed. And one of those is where we have commercial zoning, that now we can have residential there by right in areas where we used to have commercial zoning. So we used to have a big strip mall, that can now be residential zoning. That is a zoning reform, okay? And so if you look at Washington.gov and what Ms. Evans is alluding to, it is not a, she's setting up sort of a false scenario there wherein the council would be motivated to do these massive zoning reforms to garner this $1.4 billion. That is false, okay? What will allow us to unlock the $1.4 billion in federal funding, primarily above and beyond 90% of that is the dedicated funding stream. That is what the federal government wants to see. What they also want to see is you're clearing out your TIP, your Transportation Improvement Program, managed by our Metropolitan Planning Organization. When we are delivering projects and clearing them out, as we have not been doing particularly well in recent years for lack of dedicated funding, right? So I just want to address that. Transit is not inherently unsafe. Fact, it's not. Okay? I take the bus. I don't take it often. I readily admit that because it does not run frequently enough for it to work well for me. Transit ridership increases as frequency of service increases. They are directly correlated to each other. So when we talk about capacity in the system and how many people are riding the bus and kind of conversations about empty buses, our buses are not empty. I would invite you to go to Murfreesboro Pike, Nolensville Pike. Those buses are full. You all may see the bus towards the end of the line, the 3B, that's my bus. It runs very infrequently. The closer you get to the end of the line, the less full it is. That's basic kind of math and geometry on how that works. More and more people get on. A lot of people get off at Vanderbilt when I'm riding, okay? So we are at 101%, I believe now, of pre-pandemic ridership, okay? And that is with very incremental improvements in frequency of service. But all the lines on which we have increased the frequency of our service, so too has the ridership grown, okay? And so when we talk about transit and, does the bus pay for itself and so on and so forth, guess what else doesn't pay for itself, y'all? Driving, roads. They don't pay for themselves either. Those are subsidized. You know what else is subsidized? Our parks, our libraries, all the things that we love from a civic perspective. We're a big city, y'all. And so we need a effective transportation system. I opposed the last transportation plan because I thought 5 short corridors of light rail and a $1 billion tunnel weren't going to serve this city very well. And what I advocated for at that time was a more excellent bus system because it is more frugal and it delivers more for more people, okay? You need the sidewalks to get there. We are 80 years behind on sidewalk infrastructure. And I can tell you through our general fund and through policy, because that was a lot of my big policy work was around sidewalks, we cannot make up that gap. It just cannot be done without dedicated funding. That is a fact, okay? Let's see, I'm gonna kind of taking some notes here from Ms. Evans so I can have an opportunity to just kind of share some more positive things with you. The Metro Council in Nashville, yes, sir? Okay, I think I'm supposed to take questions after, okay? And we're happy to answer those questions after, okay? Ms. Evans pointed to the 6.5 miles per year of sidewalks that we're already building, and then said with the dedicated funding in a plan that is very specific with all the sidewalks, so we're not gonna get any more. Yes, we are gonna get more. This is a force multiplier. The dedicated funding of the sidewalks that are aligned to support the transportation. Yes, ma'am, we are going to get more sidewalks. So it's not that these amplify each other. They don't cancel each other out, okay? So it's not a kind of fair thing to say, well, we can just do this from the general fund. We can't. Nashville is unique in that we are 526 square miles, so we have major scale issues. And we did not require sidewalks and other infrastructure like our peer cities in other areas in the Northeast. We're that sprawled Sunbelt kind of city with a hub and spoke system and sprawled development. And so bus serves that more frugally than the previous plan that I opposed. I served on the technical advisory committee for this plan. All council members were conferred with about this plan. I think it is a prudent plan. I see Ms. Evans, she's, are you about to laugh? Is that what you're kind of trying to? Okay. All right, so to say that this plan is unnecessary and that we can do it through property tax, I mean, is that, I want us to think about how with 9.75 on our sales tax, the same as our ring counties, okay? So if you go to Williamson County and buy something, you are already paying 9.75 in sales. So for a typical family to have, $6 more a month, to have 600 synchronized signals, which support driving, to your point about queue jumping, that's not gonna slow down other cars. That's when a bus is very approximate to the intersection. It'll hold that green. But the system is intelligent enough that everything calibrates and sets well. So if you never want to get in a bus, this plan is going to help you, okay? So 86 miles of sidewalks, safety, 35 intersections improved for safety for all modes. And so I think I've kind of gone through. I welcome any questions, but I just, you know, I think Ms. Evans is making some specious assertions because Metro Council members, the mayor, myself, we're all getting along really well with the state. We have turned a page in that regard. We've very intentionally gone up to the state and met with them. And so we're working better with TDOT than we ever have as a city. So I hope that you will rest confident in that.
I would like to know.
Just a quick note, we got 10 minutes, and we'll take 10 minutes of questions for Ms. Evans and the Vice Mayor, and then Chris will, finalize.
Two things. I would like to know about projections of revenues and costs, including operating costs. And the technology that you're talking about, in this day and age, we all use phones and so forth, and we communicate instantly. This sounds like a system that is not going forward. It sounds like technology that's going backwards.
So the kind of idea like there's an app for that and that will fix everything.
No, I don't think there's an app, but there is a Starlink system, and that Starlink system is covering vast amounts
Right. So there's something called the Transit app. I have it now. I use it because there are transponders on buses, so you can real time see where buses are. When buses become more frequent, you have on your phone. So this is not kind of some Luddite anti-technology thing, but just because it's a...
My question about the cost.
Yes, sir.
I assume that a lot of this cost is involved with the laying cables and connectings and so forth. I haven't seen a breakout where you actually show the cost of the busing, the cost of the lighting. I don't see those costs brought out separately.
The plan does have all those breakouts.
Well,
for
it's
costs.
it's not given to the public. You may have it. I don't have it.
You can go to Nashville.gov and
Why should I have
look.
to go? Why don't you give it to us?
Okay. Well, Mr. Briggs, or I see somebody from WeGo here, but the costs have all, because the state comptroller has reviewed this plan, the costs have all been assessed, particular to each aspect of the plan. So nobody's hiding that. Yeah, it's on the website.
I wanted to say, normally I'm not a very good speaker, but this is my council district, and I find it very odd that you decided to come today and virtually, in my opinion, attack someone who came. I mean, Emily was...
I'm not attacking Ms. Evans. I'm just asserting that things she's saying are false.
You're attacking...
That's not an attack. That's a fact.
I'm sorry. I don't know how else to say this. I have been to a lot of meetings this year, and you have not been to one of those meetings. I went to one last night in Cane Ridge, and a man told me that he was just not going to vote for this plan simply because it raised sales tax.
That's okay. He can vote no on that. That's okay.
You're right, but why would you choose to come
because
to this?
I live 5 minutes away from here, and this is an area that I have recently represented, and I specifically reached out to the campaign because I was concerned about Ms. Evans's assertions, which I found to be false. So I'm going to Westminster Church. I am going to a League of Women Voters event. I'm going to a wide variety of events.
I'm going to be there too.
Okay, great. I look forward to that.
But I'm not exactly, I just don't understand why you would choose this meeting, and you are really targeting her, and it just does not feel good to me.
Okay, well, I will have a op-ed in the Tennessean tomorrow also, because I reached out to them to say
And I
that
did
I thought,
too.
well, Ms. Evans is very particularly impugning the council and the council's motives and how we do the work that we did. I know this area is concerned with zoning, and I want to be here to be able to respond to those concerns. That's why I'm here.
Okay. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. Back in the 1960s, Union Avenue in Memphis, they synced all the lights going east to downtown. They counterflowed the street. It's still going on today. Memphis isn't the wealthy city and community that Nashville is. We could have done this. I was involved in the AMP. All of these, ever since I moved to Nashville, they have been talking about this.
They have, you're right.
And
Yeah,
it
council
doesn't
members were
take
frustrated, for
It
sure.
doesn't take a rocket science. We don't have to spend 2 billion or 7, okay, to sync traffic lights. When you talked about no one, this is my third presentation here. Now, 3 things that nobody's really talking about. One is the complete streets. Show us a picture of a street. I think a complete street is 32nd as you go off of West End toward HCA.
Yes, ma'am, the Francis Guest connector that goes up and over.
That's a complete street, which is a disaster.
A complete street might look different depending on the context.
But you need to be honest. Which corridors will be a complete street? Nobody's talking about that.
So
Wait just a minute. Let me finish my question.
Sorry, I thought you were posing a question. Go ahead.
Nobody has talked about where are the 12 transit centers. Will they all look like the one that has been built on Clarksville Highway to the cost of $17 million? Now, will they look like that? And where will they be? No one is talking about the Crosstown Connector Street. All right, but those are questions that are not on your presentation.
Okay, so the questions I think I heard in there, if I may, Councilman, can I okay, so the questions I think that were in there were regarding the all-access corridors and the complete streets that you have seen in smaller segments with newer roads that we've done in various places. That will depend very specifically on the available right-of-way in any particular corridor. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution for every corridor, but if you look at plans for, say, Gallatin or Dickerson, those are already in progress. I concur with an earlier gentleman. We have, in a lot of places, paint-only bike lanes put down on these major arterials. They're rarely used because they're inherently dangerous and they don't feel good. They're unsafe, right? But we can build bikeable networks. So a complete street doesn't mean, if it's not appropriate for that corridor, that there will be a bikeway or otherwise. Okay, and the second question I heard was about the transit centers. I would suggest, like maybe out in Bellevue, in the massive One Bellevue Place and Mall out there, that might be a good spot for a transit center. You can see one in front of Hillsborough High School. So they're looking in particular nodes and areas to see what might be good places. So it's conceived of as in the structure of the plan. It helps facilitate crosstown routes. We're delivering more of those crosstown routes, so you don't have to go all the way downtown to go back. She was asking about complete streets and the transit centers. Okay, I'm just trying to give a complete answer, sir, but go ahead.
Hi.
We're going to try to finish up in the next couple of minutes here.
Okay, Vice Mayor, I want to talk specifically about the more of the signals and the safety aspect, particular to this clause that says that the projects may shift to respond to changing conditions over the 15-year life of the program. Outside of the buses, what metrics are being used to determine the priority of these signals and these services? Because what I see as a Nashville native who's lived on Tolbert Road my entire life, whose
Which road, say again?
Tolbert Road, we've been there since enslavement, and I see a signal coming up for Noble Heights that came up this year. So our children have not been able to cross the street for years and decades, but you get a new apartment complex and they're going to have a traffic signal all of a sudden. So I just want you to speak to the priority in terms of these signals and these services. And I say that as a person who does believe we need a transit solution in this city.
I appreciate that. I think thank you. From a prioritization perspective, right, the corridors that we are delivering for frequent transit service, signals being added there and synchronized will be, as I understand it, the priority. But from a safety perspective, where we have high fatality and high crash rates, we're looking and prioritizing those. Safety is very, very important. Presently, what you have in our area is that infrastructure is aligned with kind of the density or magnitude of a project. And so while there might not have been a traffic signal prior, even though we know people need to cross the street and we want them to be safe, it gets delivered with that new apartment community because there's a certain orders of magnitude that kind of state law and that nexus will allow us to require those infrastructure improvements. So you're gonna always see some infrastructure associated with new development, but as well, this is capital investment through these dedicated funds, working through this plan, trying to deliver ASAP on sidewalks and the signals and the safety, for sure.
Thanks. We got one more question.
Hey,
I
Ashley.
really have 4, but you know, I can't. But anyway, no. So I know several years ago, the city purchased a light synchronized system, but it was never put in place. It was like $10 million. What happened with all that?
So that was prior to my time on council. I recall in the Berry administration when we had our first Public Works Director, Mr. Macy. We're on our 5th NDOT Public Works Director, and so that's been a little bit challenging for the city, I will tell you. And so I cannot speak to that previous kind of system or what the intent was there. I can only speak to what I know during my time has been implemented and funded, and that is this traffic management center, both with federal partnership dollars and local funds, and that is in place per Mr. Briggs's insight to kind of bring all of these things together and online.
Can you clarify another thing? I keep on hearing that part of the Biden-Harris, I guess, incentive for this transportation thing is that they want low-income housing to be at each of the, you don't call them hubs, what do you call them? What did you call it?
Transit-oriented development,
yes.
TODs?
Yeah, so I wanted to understand that because what I heard, like I know there's definitely a set location right now, and that's Burton Hills. And so like one of the buildings does not have enough, people are not filling it up with businesses. So they're going to turn it into a place for subsidized housing or something like. I mean, will you clarify that? Is that definitely happening? I mean, because the papers that are back there have the Harris Biden thing that says they're going to put the subsidized housing at each of those.
So no money from this plan, the dedicated, is going to housing specifically, though you can co-locate, and there are incentives. Ms. Evans spoke to those for transit-oriented development in those sites. So, Mr. Briggs, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I just want to clarify one thing that's on the map. So when you look at the map, the pink circles are park and ride lots. There are red circles that are with a bus on it. Those are transit centers. So the one in Burton Hills is actually a park and ride lot. There's also a park and ride lot that's identified closer to St. Thomas. The only transit centers that are near this area are at Bellevue, where there is the recycling there at I-40, and then one at White Bridge in Charlotte. So I just wanted to clarify that I think those two are getting maybe confused.
I've heard the Burton Hills location. Is that not happening? The Burton Hills, the building that's like it's already there. The building's already there, and they're going to turn it into housing.
I don't know about housing or any other development plans, but it's only been identified for a park and ride lot there, and then there's a transit center that's right next to Hillsborough High School today.
So there's not a parking near the Hillsborough High School?
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Vice Mayor, and thanks, Emily. Emily and Vice Mayor, do you want 1 minute to just say something, or how would you like to finish?
I mean, I would welcome Emily. The questions were all directed to me, but this time was supposed to be for questions for Ms. Evans and wrap up as well, so it was not my intent to take
just a
that.
1 minute summary.
Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes. Yeah.
When the developments that TDOT, NDOT study for the intersection at White Bridge Road and Harding Place, Jimmy Granberry's, Mr. May's development, okay, those developments, I feel like the council doesn't do themselves any good service by allowing developments like that. How did you think that was going to affect traffic? When NDOT came and spoke to us at MBA about this, they told us that the study was done the week of Thanksgiving. Just feel like how much traffic goes through there. When council allows developments like that to be built, and then you complain about traffic, I feel like you are adding traffic. And then also when you end up, I mean, Emily may not agree, or you may not agree, but I feel like when you talk about mesh programs, you talk about turning single-family homes into quadrants so that 20 people can live in a home, which may have 8 cars or whatever it is. When you talk about affordable housing and you end up
Okay, let me recap what I think she's saying here, which is this. Again, I'm concerned about this plan because it is in a long line of policies that are very expensive for the city, both in terms of livability and affordability, and do not deliver benefits for the broadest group of people in this city. That's it. I don't think it's good for Nashville. I urge you to vote against it for that reason. Thank you very much for your time. I enjoyed representing you, and okay, her point is to, the council doesn't particularly help when it comes to some of the zoning decisions they've made. There's a big disconnect here between the intensification of our land use plans and development, along our corridors, and the awareness of the public of that. I do understand that, and that has been, a problem in the past. But I think Thom wants to wrap it up, and I just want to just say that, when you go into the voting polls, you really have to think about these policies in terms of not this year and what this vice mayor says or what this council person says, but over the next 15 or 20 years, and whether or not you want to do battle with, over zoning. Because my feeling is, and I feel every time I go over a speed bump, that this city's government has gotten almost aggressively intolerant of the people that live here and the choices they choose to make. Thank you.
I'm sorry that Ms. Evans feels that way. Okay. My neighborhood is not going to be rezoned, nor is yours, okay? I was president of my neighborhood association for many years, okay? I think I have a very strong neighborhood supportive record. I fought Airbnb, phasing them out, defending neighborhoods. So to answer the question that was posed about Belmead Plaza in particular, that is exactly where we should put density. Nashville. Yep, I think it's a good plan. I stand by that vote. Okay, and I think what you all are not understanding is that when you put density on a corridor like that, and you increase the frequency of service, the sidewalks, and the capacity, that protects your neighborhoods, right? When we put, it does. When you put residential where an old Steinmart was or where an old Belmead Plaza was, that does protect your neighborhood. Nashville Next, our countywide general plan, says density on the corridors aligned with transit, okay? So I just wanted to respond to that concern. Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. Before we go on, and I don't know if we have time for another question, but my goal here was to create an open forum, right? You guys are informed voters. I might disagree, and just recognize we all come from different points of view, different perspectives. I might disagree with Emily, I might disagree with someone else, but we all come from a different place in how we view things, and I think respecting each other. I have a thing, seek to understand, then be understood. Hopefully this gives you a better understanding of that view. Can I get something quickly? Yeah.
Just a simple question.
Yeah.
The 24/7, 365, I mean, if we're concerned about traffic, can you tell me how a 2 o'clock on Sunday morning trip from Walmart to downtown is going to help me commute to downtown on Monday? How does spending money to do those kinds of things, it seems to me that's almost like the fire department driving around town to look to see where there's a fire.
Okay, let's take that off. Mike, you're still here. Okay, Mike's still here. Let's go. Okay, the last 5-10 minutes, if you can just get over with Mike, he can help you, because I really have to move on. It's 8:10 and we're past the time, and you guys are blinking, meaning I know when everybody gets a little sleepy. And I didn't bring any beer, wine, or whatever you might enjoy. I'm sorry, but there's no incentive. But I wanted to make sure Chris, who, as you know, we started to protect our neighborhood, right? We all have different points of view, but we do believe Nest is not the right thing for our neighborhood. Outside the character, I was part of us delaying, at least deferring that, and worked with Chris and this group here to create a grassroots group, and we got a good leadership with several people here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make this really brief, and we've got a few slides we'll put up, but I'm going to make it shorter than I was planning to even make it, and that was pretty short. But next month, we're going to take a little more dive into this. We were hoping to do it this month, but we're not on the referendum, so we reprioritized. But ultimately, you know, those of you that know me, I've been in architecture and planning, construction development, and I spent 4 years in capital improvement projects for the state. So kind of an odd collection of experiences, but I guess after you've done something for 40 years, that can happen. But ultimately, one of the things I've learned is the truth is usually somewhere in the middle, and go do your own homework. And so in doing some homework, and Michael, part of the reason we looked at this is we've heard two different stories from transit plan folks. One is affiliation with the zoning was never part of the equation. The other is it's up to 10% of the scorecard. All right, those two things are not a match. And so we did go back and look at to the federal level what's going on. And, you know, I'm not going to spend any time talking about these except just to point out that we've got, you can't see this on the screen. All right, so you've got Department of Transportation, two different programs there. You've got block grants, you've got various things, and everything written on this slide is from White House fact sheets. And one of the last things you see is to rethink outdated zoning codes. And so just pay attention to that. I'm going to come back to it in just a second. Let's go on to the next slide, please. And then other funds that include the conversation between transportation and housing. And so there are 8 federal agencies with policies tying success or scoring to zoning reform. So I don't know if it was in the consideration or not, but I know that we all should know, if we're in the business of working our policies, that this exists. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things that I think I could get Emily and the vice mayor and all of us to agree on is we've already done a bunch of reform. And this is one of the things that I think the junior varsity that arrived didn't understand, is how much zoning reform has already been done in Nashville. And we can prove this fairly easily. Let's go to the next slide, please. You know, you do have to look at what's going on across the country. These programs, first program I worked on out of college, which I've already told you is 40 years ago, was sort of what we talk about today in zoning reform. But really, it got heavily concentrated and begun almost exactly 20 years ago. And there's a lot of data around that. And so I wanted to start here. And I think this article's kind of funny because it talks about everybody taking a stab at zoning reform. It shows Joe Biden in the picture, but this is a neoliberal or Republican publication that's really a free market publication. So both sides of the fence or of the aisle are claiming this is a good thing because you can just make more money if you drop more income producers on your property. All right, let's go to the next slide. You know, we do have a problem with the inflation of housing. What most of the studies are showing is that these programs that tell you that Economics 101, improving the supply, will bring the costs down. Well, it's not happening. What's happening in almost every location is it's causing people to be displaced, and it's causing significant inflation well above the inflation cost of living rate. Next slide. So we have Nashville next, and I hear a lot of people get frustrated and tell Emily and the vice mayor and all of us that, you know, we didn't feel very well represented. The good news is, under this system that Metro has, you are represented. You do get to come to the table, and you do get to say what you have on your mind. I would, however, recommend you do get to know, and we're kind of unique here, and Thom, thank you for having these kind of forums, but you know, we really ought to encourage all council people to have these forums, because the truth is, you know, you form, if you want to make a difference, being only on the defense is not the right place to be. And so, you know, show up and help our elected officials know what you're for. And so we've had a lot of conversation that we have to be for some things, and we're perfectly ready in this community to be for truly affordable housing. And so one of the things that I'm seeing as a pattern, particularly looking at the host of cities that have already been through this, is to understand the value that today, if you're a NIMBY, and you know, we see that term used rather negatively, but I'm the believer that Nashville is my backyard, and it's one of the things that we're here for. Allow single-family neighborhoods to have a voice. It allows missing middle neighborhoods to have a voice, multifamily to have a voice. Everybody's got a voice. Poor have a voice. People of wealth have a voice. Everybody's got a voice. Next slide, please. Almost entirely, I've called it NEST. That's really unfair. The significant places that have done zoning reforms modeled like those offered earlier this year really rely on the guidance of federal initiatives that are pushing this language that, oh, the world's zoning is just all outdated and not working very well, so we need to replace it. And the fix is zoning reform. It doesn't matter what part of the city you're in, that's the fix. All right, so the other thing they're encouraging is that we legislate it just so it's done by right, under the guise of let's eliminate red tape. They're also saying that property protections in the form of zoning laws is taking away your freedom. That's moving your, you know, that's not creating a free market. Well, you know, this is where odd bedfellows are getting married in this program. And it's where we should all be concerned, no matter who gets elected. So that's what we're interested in looking at. And so the big difference between current day zoning reform to me is it starts removing that opportunity for us to have that participation that today we appreciate and that we have. Next slide, please. This is the bill that was introduced, one of them, and regardless of how you stack it up, it's trying to allow anywhere in the urban service district residential scale multifamily. You know, that's just a lot of houses on one lot. I'm not going to dig into this further. We can do that later in when we find if it's important or not. But anyway, this is what's brought to us. Next slide. You know, the two council members who brought them, you know, we're busy pushing the Nashville's outdated zoning code. Did we hear that anywhere else in the publications running around? It's all coming down from really higher in government. You know, on the left side, we need missing middle housing. Well, your next plan allows for missing middle housing, particularly in the transition zone between the urban area and suburban area, where the models they like to show you that are so great would exist well. Nashville has existing capacity in all those places for more projects. And so next slide. Now, hot off the press last month, just to address the dated zoning we have here, is the George Mason University and their think tank with this headline: Tennessee's HPR law and its transformation of Nashville housing market, a model for other states. Do we believe that our model is dated and out? You know, no, it's not. And if we look at the graph that they provided, Nashville is second in building the most house supply of any other city 5 miles from the city center in the whole country. And we don't have these laws. We've already been reformed. These things that we're seeing are already working. So when the city, I fear that part of the reason this has happened is that we had council members sort of preliminary jump into this without going through the planning commission that might have told them, we can already check that box. And so Houston is the only one that had more. I think it's interesting that the big case studies where you can go learn the most today, Los Angeles, Seattle, Minneapolis, these places, heck, we're even here in Minneapolis is a success on TV right now. It was not, has a whole bunch of public money plowed into it. They're not even on the list. And so, you know, there's another third-party study that shows us that this is not even a measurable success. So there's a lot of background to this. This is probably the latest, best study that's out there. Next slide. You know, next month I'll talk about this. I'm not going to talk about it today. What's interesting is what has caused this to happen in Nashville is three things. One is state of Tennessee developed a horizontal regime property law. The second is state of Tennessee redid the condo laws. The third thing is Metro in the 2015-17, I think our part was 17 here in West Nashville, actually allowed more places to do higher densities. That was zoning reform. So at the end of the day, we can talk about this more. We are trying to learn this, but ultimately what we know, if we do reform, it's going to make more inflation and just put it on steroids above what it already is today if we follow the trend that's happened in every other city that's done this. And so we are trying to be prepared. We want to participate from a proactive level because we want it to happen where it needs to happen. But we don't need it. We don't need to solve housing for the poorest by focusing on the wealthiest of neighborhoods. And so, you know, that ultimately is probably enough being said today. I think we have an opportunity to hopefully participate before the only option is a defense. I think all of us would agree housing costs need to be addressed, housing supply needs to be addressed, but it's not the crisis nor the destroy the credibility. And yeah, and you know, I think we've arrived already. You know, ultimately, what you'll see here is from 2010 to 2024, Nashville has 20,000 new homes within 5 miles of the urban area. Has 9,000 tall skinnies that got built. You know, these kind of things. There's plenty of data. We're asking that we look at the performance, and we're done. So everybody can go home. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank Chris and everybody that's on our group. Stand up real quick. It's the leadership of our communities, some of the presidents of neighborhood associations. Wayne, John, you guys have done a great job. We meet on a pretty regular basis, and it's the presidents of each neighborhood association are all part of the board, and we think we are going to be ready with a lot of information to support keeping our character of our neighborhood. And as you know, Chris has talked, we don't want to always be defensive, right? We know there's problems. We want to be proactive, but at the same time, we don't want to change our neighborhood. And we need to make sure we protect it in every way. And I got 3 more years, and I'll do everything I can. But at the same time, we have a grassroots group that we are going to fight for our neighborhood. I appreciate Vice Mayor come here. I know you got a really busy schedule. Emily, I know we were throwing darts at everybody, and I appreciate everybody coming here. I will send out a note on you each have a vote. I think all of us have a perspective. I'm taking away some perspectives from tonight. Seek to understand, to be understood. I rode buses in Chicago and San Francisco. I've lived places, and I understand a little bit what that feels like and how my staff reacted. But I appreciate coming. Next time, I'll bring an extra case of beer. I appreciate it. You guys have a good night.
Thanks.
Hey, Emily, take care.